What's up, guys? My name is Matt from Magic the Greatening, and today I got our first actual, super budget deck tech for us. It's going to be blue-black Revel in Budget. Okay, so across mainboard and sideboard, this deck is going to cost you about $45, which is really cheap, especially for some of the cards we're playing. There are a little bit more cheaper solutions to some of the cards we're playing. We're playing two Planeswalkers, we're playing a sweeper that costs a few dollars each, so there are solutions, and I'll give those different solutions when we get to it. But before we get into this video, go ahead and hit that like button, helps out a lot. Subscribe if you are new, and click the eye icon, top right corner. 4 choices for you up there. Let's get right into it. We're going to start with the creatures because I like starting with the creatures, and we're going to just go right through. We're only playing 9 creatures. We're going to be playing 4 copies of Contraband Kingpin, 2 copies of Deadeye Plunders, and 3 copies of Marionette Master. Okay, I get that Direfleet Hoarder is played in basically every other treasure deck, but I moved it to the sideboard because the card is just god-awful against anything that's not aggro. It's a very good chump blocker for aggro. I guess if you're playing against control, it's a good card. But I just felt like it's a sideboard option. It feels like a waste of a turn 2 play. We have a lot other better choices for our turn 2 play. So Contraband Kingpin, in fact, is one of them. And for a blue and a black, you get a 1/4 lifelinker that says whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. This is super strong. I really like this card in this deck. I like a full 4 of, nothing less. Not only is it an awesome blocker against aggro decks, because most of the cards in aggro have 1 toughness, but also it has lifelink. And also it has 4 toughness, which means it can't get abraded, and it can't get lightning strike, can't get shocked, magma sprayed. All these awesome red removal cards don't kill this. Harness Lightning, if they had like a tune on turn 1, can kill this. But if you're willing to have your opponent waste a Harness Lightning and 4 energy on this guy, that is just purely awesome. But if they keep it out, we could just get so many scries, it's ridiculous. So this card is a perfect fit in the deck, and just strictly a better 2-drop than Direfleet Hoarder, in my opinion. And then the 2 Deadeye Plunders is basically a good late-game top deck card. I didn't want to play too many copies of this. I don't want it to be our plan with Deadeye Plunders, but he can get really big, really fast. We're playing, obviously, a ton of stuff that creates treasure tokens, but he can create treasure tokens themselves. If you just have like a treasure map out, this can get big, so... so it could be like late in the game, it could be like a 5-mana 10/10, and this could just win you the game. And also at instant speed, you can create treasure tokens, which is really awesome. So no point in not playing 2 copies of Deadeye Plunders. I feel like the 2 of is right in the middle spot of where you want with this card. And then 3 Marionette Master. I see people only playing 1 copy of this in their decks, and I laugh. This card is ridiculously strong in this deck. It's probably better than Revel and Riches itself. So let me explain why this card is better than Revel and Riches itself. For 6 mana, get a 1/3 with Fabricate 3. It says whenever an artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette's Master's power. I need to explain for those that don't know. When you sacrifice something like a treasure token or clue, that it's like a token artifact, and you sacrifice it, it does go to the graveyard before leaving the game. You don't just sack it and it leaves the game. Those tokens do briefly go into your graveyard and then leave. So if you fabricate, put all 3 counters of Marionette Master, and just sacrifice 5 treasure tokens right after you play this, you win the game, because that deals 20 damage. That is just way too strong. People are only playing 1-ofs, for what reason? And then also, the great thing about this card is if you don't have a lot of, treasure tokens out, which sometimes can happen, and you're behind on board, Marionette Master puts 4 creatures out for you, or can put 4 creatures out for you. Or it can make itself a 4/6, which is really hard to kill. There's just so many great flexibility things. It can be an endgame card, it can widen our board, or you can just put a big beefy dude out that's hard for your opponents to kill. All those are really good in this deck, and I don't get why people are only playing a 1-of. Alright, let's go over the non-creature spells. Our creatures are in there purely just because they're awesome, but our deck is mostly control. So let's get into the non-creature spells. We're going to be playing 4 copies of Walk the Plank and 4 copies of Treasure Map. Okay, Walk the Plank is like my substitute for Fatal Push in this deck. If you have Fatal Push or you're willing to spend the money on Fatal Push, put either Fatal Push in the spot of Walk the Plank or move it to the sideboard, because we like instant speed, 1 mana cost removal spells. That's just super strong. But Walk the Plank is a very, very budget version of the card, and it is actually in some ways a little bit better than Fatal Push. So Walk the Plank is an inclusion. We're trying to be control. Treasure Map is probably our best treasure card outside of Revel and Riches and Marionette Master. It's a 2 mana artifact that you can pay 1 to tap it and scry, put a landmark counter on it. If it has 3 or more landmarks, transform it and create 3 treasure tokens, and then it transforms into a land, not a legendary land, but a land named Treasure Cove that you can tap to add mana to your mana pool, a colorless mana, or you can tap to sacrifice a treasure and draw a card. This is a super awesome card engine thing. If you have Revel and Riches and you're just killing things after killing things, you can use this land to just continually sack treasure tokens for cards instead of mana when you don't need it. And I also need to point that we're playing a lot of like 4, 5, 6 mana stuff in the deck, but that's because we're creating a lot of treasure tokens and use them freely. Okay, use the treasure tokens when you need it. Don't think you need to push them off to save them for Revel and Riches. If you think that's your game plan for that game and that's the only way you're gonna win this game, then go ahead and save them. But we have a lot of other win conditions other than just Revel and Riches, so do keep that in mind. All right, let's talk about the 3 and 4 mana non-creature spells here. We're going to be playing 3 copies of Supreme Will, 4 copies of Bontu's Last Reckoning, 4 copies of Pirate's Prize, and 2 copies of Tezzeret the Schemer. Pirate's Prize is surprisingly good. For 4 mana, it's a Hieroglyphic Illumination at sorcery speed that also creates us a treasure token. I get it's at sorcery speed, and I get people won't like that, but the card, if there's nothing on board, you might as well play it. You might as well play it. So, also creates a treasure token, super good. We needed some card draw. If you really don't like this sorcery speed thing, you can play Glimmer instead. But I liked Pirate Prize because it stays on theme. It's super budget. You know, there's that. Bontu's Last Reckoning. There is a cheaper solution for a sweeper. It's Yahenni's Expertise. You can play Yahenni's Expertise. There's no reason not to. All the decks that are going to go super wide aren't going to have creatures with, they're not going to have a whole bunch of 4/4 creatures out. But Bontu's costs, 1 less. Very good against aggro decks that are going to put out a whole bunch of 1-drops. And it's just unconditional destroy all creatures, which is very good with Revel and Riches. So there's that. Supreme Will, good counter spell, good card draw. We all know how good Supreme Will is. No point in explaining that more. And then Tezzeret the Schemer is basically a 2-of in all these treasure token decks. So his +1 is basically create a treasure token, but it's important to know that it's actually not a treasure token. It's called an Ethereum Cell, which is kind of lame, but it goes on kind of theme with our artifacts. Still works with Marionette Master, still works with Deadeye Plunder, still works with Contraband Kingpin. So things like with our creatures, Tezzeret interacts with them very well. It's -2 is target creature gets +X, -X until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control. You can pump up your Deadeye Plunders, you can pump up your Marionette Master, you can use this as removal, all very good things. And then his emblem is at the beginning of combat on your turn, target artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 5/5. The emblem is usually game ending because you just create all your treasure tokens will eventually turn into 5/5s that are not going to be able to be stopped. So if you want to, you could probably take out the 2 Tezzeret the Schemers and add 2 cancels or 2 counter spells or 2 removal spells or 2 glimmers or something like that. Or maybe if you didn't like Pirate's Prize, you could switch Pirate's Prize with 4 glimmers and then switch the 2 Tezzerets for 2 Pirate's Prize, if that makes any sense. So if you don't want to pay the $5 or the $10 for both copies of Tezzeret the Schemer, you can go ahead, switch it out for either more removal, more counter spells, or more card draw. Whatever fits your fancy. All right, let's talk about the 5 mana non-creature spells, and these 2 are probably the best, one of the best cards or best cards in the decks. I just screwed that up. But anyway, we're playing 3 copies of Revel and Riches and 3 copies of Spell Swindle. Okay, if you're watching this and you do not have Spell Swindle yet, get it. It's like Confirmed Suspicions, but better, like a lot better. If you can counter like a 5, 6, 7, or like a nickel bolus with this thing, you should just win the game. This is one of our main producers of treasure tokens. Yeah, we have things like Treasure Map. Yeah, we have things like Revel and Riches. Pirate's Prize contributes a little bit. Deadeye Plunders contributes a little bit. But Spell Swindle, with one Spell Swindle, you should be able to get enough treasure tokens to win the game, whether it's through Revel and Riches or Marionette Master. A super strong counter spell. And yeah, there's no reason to not being playing 3. I was only playing 2 at one point, but you do want to see this every game, and if you want to, you can have it twice in a game. But seeing at least once in a game is really, really awesome. Usually, you're going to save this for big, converted mana cost things against huge dinosaurs. It's pretty awesome and stuff like that. So, and then the 3 Revel and Riches, obviously, the deck is slightly built around this. You could kind of see we're a controlled build. And this says whenever a creature an opponent dies, or a creature an opponent controls dies, you get a treasure. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. That's a win condition. Marionette Master is a win condition. We've gone over the multiple win conditions in the deck. Deadeye Plunders is a win condition too. That thing can get really big really fast. And also Tezzeret's a good win condition. There's a lot of different ways you can win the game with this deck. But yeah, so those are our 5 mana stuff. That's all our non-creature spells. That's in our entire main board. Let's move to the lands. All right, we're trying to stay budget, which means no expensive dual lands. It's just going to be 4 Evolving Wild and then 10 of each island and swamp. If you have the money or you already have the cards, get Drowned Catacomb and get Fetid Pools. We like cycling lands. We like lands that don't come in tapped that can provide both colors. We're playing like Marionette Masters double black, Deadeye Plunders is blue black, Tezzeret the Schemer is blue black, Spell Swindle, is double blue, Bontu's Last Reckoning is double black, Walk the Plank is double black. There's a huge theme where we need both colors and we need plenty of it. So if you got the dual lands or you have the money and you really want to make this deck work, spend your money on the lands, because that's very important. Even if you're trying to upgrade the deck, I've been giving simple upgrades throughout the deck, like Fatal Push and stuff. Get the lands first. Definitely get the lands first. Anyway, let's move to the sideboard. All right, let's talk about the sideboard, and it's pretty simple. So we're going to be playing 3 Crooked Combination, because I am not going to give up that Graveyard Strategies are still a thing. Now, obviously, if you don't see Graveyard Strategy decks wherever you play, whether it's on Moto or at your kitchen table or at Friday Night Magic, if you don't see any graveyard stuff, you don't need to play Crook in your sideboard. But I see it somewhat often, and I don't like them being able to relentlessly get things back, so Crook isn't always in my sideboards. 4 Direfleet Forder against aggro. So, again, we talked about this already. Let's move on. 4 Duress against Control. The great thing about having a blue-black control deck is it gives you so many different options against other control decks. Black gives you removal, it gives you sweepers, and it gives you discard spells, while blue gives you counter spells and draw spells. All of those are just really good against control in general. So Duress is our version. If you want to play like Lay Bare the Heart or something like that, you can go ahead and do that. And then 4 Negate. We're not going to be playing Spell Pierce. But Negate is very good against control, so we can, resolve our Planeswalkers, our Revel and Riches, stuff like that. So 4 Negate in the sideboard. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. This deck is really awesome. This deck is really fun. This deck's really powerful, and it's somewhat cheap. The only cards that cost like any money are Bontu's Last Reckoning and Tezzeret the Schemer. But I mean, I gave cheaper options to both those cards to cut $20 from the deck. You could make this $25 if you wanted to. But, yeah, that is our video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to vote for next video's deck tech, and I'll see you in a few days.